And she's like, girl, don't go on testosterone because my best friend, she wakes up in the morning talking about sex. She goes to sleep at night talking about sex. I can't take it. Seriously, like, is testosterone
woman
something?
Talk. Take one.
Shit. You opened this can of worms. You asked for it, you got it.
Premarin comes from pregnant mare's urine.
Sharon. On behalf of the room.
My face.
Say what now? Like, we did not know. Oh, we gonna be on the chat GPT with this.
How long can you stay on HRT?
Forever, if you want to. We've all announced, it's like being at an AA meeting. It's like, hi, I'm Sharon. I'm 67 and I've been on hormones for 15 years. We've gotten so comfortable with suffering. It starts from the moment you get your period, and then it's PMS, and it cramps and pregnancy. We just have accepted that burden that this is just something that comes along with womanhood. Getting to the end of your periods completely may take 10 years, and that's what it is on average for Black women. 10 years is a long time if you are suffering and you are having hot flashes and night sweats and you can't sleep and you're irritable and you got brain fog and joint pain. Then you should, not like, you should seek treatment.
Welcome to the Embrace Live podcast, a masterclass in living well, where we uncover how New York's most successful leaders in business, media, and entertainment navigate the intensity of this city while prioritizing wellness, health, purpose, and fulfillment. From boardrooms to red carpets, we dive deep into the habits, mindset, and resilience that keep them thriving in the city that never sleeps. Okay, guys, welcome to Grown Woman Talk. Thank you for being here. You guys showed up early. This is a great turnout, so thank you. So, we're going to have some grown woman talk. I, of course, am not a woman, but I am going to be a part of this discussion. So we are going to invite the guests up. We're going to hear from the illustrious Dr. Malone, and we're also going to have some personal stories, and you guys will get to ask your questions. So our first guest is a global C-suite marketing executive, BT, Viacom, and all other and many, many more things. Oxygen. Janine Liebert, who is a Brace Life Studios OG. Come on. Next up is author of Bring Yourself, How to Harness the Power of Authenticity and Negotiate Fearlessly. She is a negotiations teacher at Wharton and a client and a good friend, Maury Tahiripur. And someone I've wanted to work with for quite a while, Angelique Miles, really epitomizes grace and beauty as we go from 40s to 50s and onward. She is a beauty influencer, a former music exec, and she's here to join us today. Come on in. Okay, and now, our guest, who is a board-certified obstetrician, OBGYN. She's a certified menopause practitioner. She's the chief medical advisor at Alloy Women's Health. She is the person that Michelle Obama says she runs to for for advice, especially on health issues. We have author of Grown Woman Talk, Dr. Sharon Malone. Okay, there's a lot of people on stage. All right, so let's get started. Dr. Malone, your book, This Is Why We're Here. This is why people have shown up and shown out. Talk to us a little bit about why you wrote Grown Woman Talk and why now.
I I will. But first, I want to say thank you for having me and thank all of you for coming out. I'm in New York City, okay? I make it here. I can make it anywhere, right? I'm good. So thank you. But to give you just a little bit of background about who I am and why I wrote this book, I am the youngest of 8 children, and I'm the youngest by a lot. So I have, you can imagine, had to navigate and negotiate for a lot of my older brothers and sisters' health issues. There's a lot about my family history that I don't know. My mother died when I was 12. So as I was, I would do this for my friends of friends, and family, because when anything happens, someone calls me. All right, now I'm an OBGYN, but I went to med school, so there are other things I remember. And it just always strikes me how much one must advocate for yourself. And if you don't know how to do it, they call me and then I advocate for them. And I said, these are smart people. These are, they're smart, they're well-resourced. And I realized that there's a communication gap there between the doctors and patients, because I know that these people are capable of understanding, but somehow it's gotten lost. So when I left my practice, I thought about it and I said, and I've been doing menopause for a long time, but I said, you remember that book? Some of you are of age to remember the book, What to Expect When You're Expecting? Okay, well, I wanted to write the book, What to Expect If You Expect to Live Beyond 40. And so that's how it starts. It's storytelling. I tell stories about my family, about patients, and situations that I hope that many of you, when you read, you'll see yourself. But it's about how to navigate this medical system, which has changed dramatically in the 30 plus years since I started. And it's what's expected of you as a patient, because that relationship has changed. And then all the things you may encounter in midlife. And we go all the way from perimenopause to how to write your own eulogy. So we've got that too. So that you can use that for your parents. Don't do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And so we have 3 guests with us and who have different stories about their own menopause journey. And so we're just going to start hearing some grown women talk, and then Dr. Malone will jump in and give us some advice. So,
Am I the first grown woman?
You're the first.
The second grown woman to talk. Good. So I'm Janine. And thank you for having us. And I really will keep it short, which, I normally don't. But we are so lucky to have Dr. Malone here, who I've had the pleasure of knowing for many years. And I literally have the hardcover because it's a little bit Bible. So I'm ready for the questions. But so I turned 55. That 1, 2, 3, 4 is me at 55. Thank you. And I was just talking with Sharon about the fact that I remember my mother never talked about menopause. I don't even think I knew what the word menopause, it just wasn't even in the vocabulary of things that I was thinking about, talking about, or anything. And while social media has its pros and cons, that has definitely been a pro, that now it's a word that we use and that we talk about. So I think even when I was perimenopausal, I don't think I knew I was perimenopausal because we weren't talking about it that way. Things were happening, moving, shifting. I have 2 daughters, 19 and 22 respectively. So after you get through the child care and all of that, as Robert said, and most of you know, I work for the better part of my career in media. So you're working all the time. Hey, girl. Working all the time and doing just nonstop working. So when you can actually take a pause, you kind of look back and you're like, wow, things are moving and shifting in ways that I didn't even know. So for me, the menopause journey has been more, I feel like now I am really taking stock of what that means and have more questions of things. We're just used to accepting changes in our bodies or changes in our mood swings or changes and just powering and not asking questions because we don't have the time. But now that I have a little bit more time on my hands, I do have some questions and I'm excited to ask them today.
Maury?
Hi. I'm Maury. Thank you, Sharon, for being here. I almost have a book that's filled with that many questions. I just don't have mine, so you ask all of them, please. So I turned 54 in August. And thank you. And just like Janine, we never talked about menopause or really anything related to sex or anything else in my household. I'm Iranian. And we just never talked about, anything that had to do with us as women. So our sexuality, our bodies, with my mom, my sister, none of us. So, menopause was certainly never talked about. And I was just associated menopause with hot flashes. That's it. So I was like, if I don't have hot flashes, I must not be in menopause. So, and I teach for a living. So, I was fine. There was a lot happening to my body. I just didn't associate it with menopause. Of course, now I associate everything with menopause. But at the time, I was like, no hot flashes, no menopause. So I was teaching. I just realized that over a few weeks, I had brain fog. And I couldn't remember. It wasn't like what I called $20 words. It was like $2.50 word. It was like them, I was like, what is happening? So Robert had suggested that I go see my OBGYN anyway. We talk a lot about menopause and what have you. And so if I made an appointment, I'd go see my OBGYN and they had done blood tests. And she's like, you're in menopause. I was like, no, I'm not. I was like, how do you know? She's like, you have no estrogen in your body. I was like, oh, okay. And then it all started falling into place. And I honestly didn't even understand it until I went on HRT, which we'll talk about. And all of a sudden it was like everything was fixed that I didn't even know had anything to do with menopause all of a sudden. And what really that moment of realizing what this body that I'm now inside, that I have now taken over, which feels liberated and unburdened in so many different ways. I now think about the fact that, God, I wish we had had discussions. God, I wish I had stopped and thought about the fact that maybe I should even ask people that were women that were in menopause. And I just never did. It was never talked about. And I honestly didn't know anything beyond just, like I said, hot flashes. And so really, I'm so excited to have this conversation because I still have so many questions. And just the liberation, I think, seriously, the only word I can think of is the unburdening of how I feel and how good it feels to, I've always known myself. I've always really felt myself in my body, but I didn't know how to attribute some of the things that I was feeling. And now that I know to ask, but I'm kind of digging this journey. I'm kind of digging 54. So excited to be here.
And Angelique.
Hi, I'm Angelique. I am 59, just turned 59 in August, which I'm still wrapping my head around because I'm like, I'm going to be 60 next year. Where did the time go? So I've been in menopause since 52, but I've been on HRT for 5 years. And I always knew that I didn't have to suffer for some reason. I was like, I know there's something I can do where I don't have to have brain fog, hot flashes, all those things that come with menopause. I didn't know what it was until I spoke with a friend of mine one day. And she's like, I just talked to my doctor and she just sounded different. So I asked her what was going on. She's like, I'm on HRT. So I was like, that's what it is. And I'm going to I looked up a doctor, found him, and I've been on HRT ever since, the pellets in particular. I'm sure we'll get into that. But I just felt like I didn't have any idea what menopause was either. My mother had a hysterectomy at 50, and I thought she was crazy. I was like, okay, mommy's crazy right now because she went into immediate menopause. So I remember that period of life where mommy's not acting like mommy usually acts. But we never talked about it. To this day, she's just like, she's 89 now. She's like, I don't even remember what it was like. And she didn't ask her mother. My grandmother lived to 102. And I wanted to ask her so much. She was like, I don't remember any of that. So, but I just, like you, I feel so liberated. I feel like, I'm like, can I be on this forever? Because I haven't had to suffer. I've had 5 really good years of no brain fog, no hot flashes, very high libido. They don't tell you that part, right? And I just feel like I'm in partnership with my body and not fighting it. So, that's it.
Okay, let's get to the questions.
I know.
All right. Maury, first question?
Like the libido thing. Now that we're there. Well, first I'll say this, that what I think I was experiencing a lot, and I really did not know that it was menopause, was that my joints hurt so much. And I work out pretty hard. And all of a sudden, I'm like, Robert, we can't do this because my elbow hurts. Robert, we can't do that because my back hurts. Robert, we can't do this because my knee and every other week it felt like I had some kind of injury, and it was just really strange to me. I went on HRT, I think early July, and I have not only have I not had any pain since, but I'm so flexible now. My body is completely different. And I am, I do the patch, I do the pellets, and I do progesterone. But I'm really sort of excited about trying testosterone. And my doctor was like, I don't want to get you to do all of these things all at once. Because then I was like, and women are using cream and their face looks good. She's like, hold on, just relax for a minute. But I went in asking about that because of what I'd read about sort of the muscle strength and what have you, and conversations that I had with Robert. And by the way, for 3 years, I was like, I'm so not interested in men. Thank God I wasn't dating, because I would be really sorry for somebody else. But I just couldn't care less. And now all of a sudden I'm like, hey, what's your name? But so that's happened. But the testosterone thing is a question. By the way, last week I had seen a couple of my students, we started talking about HRT, which I feel like everybody now talks about. They're like, hi, my name is Maury. Are you on HRT? It's like all of a sudden. And she's like, girl, don't go on testosterone, because my best friend, she wakes up in the morning talking about sex. She goes to sleep at night talking about sex. I can't take it. What should I do? And can you tell me a little bit more about the effect of, seriously, is testosterone something?
Talk. Take one.
What happens when at what point should you, what is the effect? You opened this can of worms. You asked for it, you got it. I have so many questions about sort of that next level with testosterone.
Well, that's a very good question. And as a matter of fact, a couple of days ago in the New York Times, they had a whole article about testosterone in women. And Sue Dominus, who is the same writer who did the seminal piece about women being misled about menopause a couple of years ago. So then she writes this testosterone piece. And it was just like that. Women were saying, I've got this testosterone. I'm thinking I feel like a teenage boy. I'm, sex all the time. And yeah, there is that. But let me say the pros and the cons. There are women who find that their sex life is improved by testosterone, and that's been proven in multiple studies. But it's still a coin toss, because for women, that's one part of it, spontaneous desire that you will get from testosterone. But then there is the other part of it that's called responsive desire, which, and by that I mean, well, I wasn't thinking about it, but since you brought it up, that's okay. And you're able to function normally, and it's not painful and it's not dry and all that. So that's sort of the two different spaces. So it depends on where you want to be in that spectrum. Some people find that with testosterone, you have to be careful about dosing it, because you can get too much. And too much of it is, not only will you have a really increased sex drive, you'll also get a beard. Okay. There are women there. So there's
that.
I say there's hair growth where you want it and hair loss where you don't, because it's testosterone. So, again, you have to walk a real fine line about it and just make sure that the person that you are getting your testosterone from, that whoever's making it, that lab is inspected, because there is no FDA-approved version of testosterone for women. This only the testosterone for men, and trying to dose it is really hard because a woman is supposed to take 1/10 the amount that a male dose is. Well, how do you get 1/10 of a gel pump?
Right.
That's really hard to do. So a lot of people will go to compounded testosterone, either, creams or gels or patches that are, pellets that are made. And the only thing I will say about pellets, and I know that women swear by the pellets, there's no way to regulate how much testosterone is in your pellet, how much you absorb. So generally, when you first get a pellet, you'll get a dose that's way higher than what it should be. And that's when you're in feeling great. I can, go out and, conquer the world feeling. And then eventually it comes down. But the point is that some of the changes, and that's all I will say to you, some of them are irreversible. Deepening of the voice happens. Sometimes women will, and this is not uncommon, they will say that their clitoris is enlarged. Now, whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. But that's something that sometimes that's uncomfortable. And those are the things that even if you stopped it, they don't go back. And that's why, just generally, and I have nothing against testosterone. It's approved for, for women with low libidos and sexual dysfunction. However, some of the other compounded ones, it's easy to stop them if you're having a side effect. If you're like, oh my God, I've got acne and chin hairs, well then stop it. Stop it. But when you have a pellet, it's there. So it's either right or it's not right, and it's nothing I can do or you can do to counteract it, because once it's in, it's in.
My face? My face doesn't lie. I'll be neutral.
So, I'm so glad you're laughing because I'm trying not to look at him.
Yeah. But the one thing this is the last word I say on testosterone. For people for whom it works, they're quite happy with it. But what you don't see and you don't hear are the people who've tried it and it didn't work. So it's about a coin toss, unless you're in really, in doses that are a little bit higher than what we normally recommend for women. So
I just want to ask one question on that, because you said you have to be aware of where you're buying it from, and whether I'm assuming you're saying there's some better places to buy it from. I don't know. So how do you tell?
What I would never get is testosterone from a med spa. Okay, because there are places that will dispense them in wellness centers and medi spas and whatever, and maybe they have a nurse practitioner there that can give you the injection. But couple of things, they've got a profit motive for doing that, so it's always expensive and never covered by insurance. Correct? It is not. So it may be $300, $400, $500 a shot that you have to do 4 times a year. So there's the cost of it. And then if you don't know that this is done, there are compounding pharmacies that are inspected state-wise. They're not inspected by the FDA. However, there's some degree of oversight. And if someone is in the back room back there mixing up some stuff and you don't know what's in it, I would say check your source. That's the only thing I would say. And make sure that if you are getting testosterone, that it is coming from and there is a different governing body for compounders than it is for regular drugs on for FDA, but there's a certification process for that. And if you can't, really verify that, then don't do it, and not in a med spa.
Can I?
You're supposed to have a prescription. That's exactly right.
I'd like to take us a few steps back. So I guess I'm the panelist who's not on HRT. And even more so, my OB who birthed my babies was very much like that. No, like and Black woman who kind of shut it down from the door, was basically not interested. She was like, take yourself into the Whole Foods and find some things. So I'm just Look at mine. I said the whole thing. So I would love for you so there's two parts of the conversation. One, like, do I need another doctor? So one, just how do you have that conversation? Because I do think, part of it is it's so difficult for us to even get time with a doctor and have that conversation, then to push back on them for someone you've respected for a long time. So that's part A. And then part two is just kind of, if you are interested in HRT, your doctor says no, kind of what's the process, or how do you determine if it's right for you?
Okay, well, there's one thing that I think that everybody should understand, that women generally do not get any sort of prospective information about menopause from their doctors. And then once you're in it, understand that it is a very good chance that if your doctor trained or finished medical school anytime from 2002 forward, they don't know how to treat menopause. They have grown up in the era when there was the Women's Health Initiative, a study that came out in 2002 that told everyone that hormones are bad, it causes cancer. They don't. But that sort of taint has been over hormone therapy for the past 23 years. So if you have a doctor who's telling you that, oh, you're symptomatic, just grit your teeth and it'll be over in a decade or so, because that's how long a lot of the symptoms last. And for some women, they last beyond that. And let me just say, for all the Black women in this room, the women who are least likely to get a conversation about menopause are Black women. And when they do get a conversation about it, they are least likely to take their medications even when prescribed, because there is a lot of chatter. We talk amongst ourselves, just like there are people who are saying, I'm on hormones and it's great. And then there's another, set that says, don't take that, it's dangerous, or I can't take it because I have a family history of breast cancer. Also not true. But let me say, and the reason why that's so unconscionable to me is because Black women tend to go through menopause about a year earlier than white women do. Their symptoms are more severe and they last longer. So what we are calling perimenopause is that transition stage between your peak reproductive years, which for Black women is usually in their mid-30s to early 40s, when you are entering perimenopause. And that process, getting to the end of your periods completely, may take 10 years. And that's what it is on average for Black women. Now, you tell me 10 years is a long time if you are suffering and you are having hot flashes and night sweats and you can't sleep and you're irritable and you got brain fog and joint pain. I mean, the list goes on and on. Then you should, not like, you should seek treatment, because if it's getting in the way of how you feel, how you're functioning in the workplace, how you function at home, why wouldn't you do the most effective thing for you, which is the symptomatic treatment of menopause, is hormone therapy. And let me say, on the other hand, you're an exceptional person like Janine. There are about 20% of women who really don't have a lot of menopausal symptoms. And if you don't, I'm like, okay, I'm happy for you. I'm not going to try to make you take something that you don't need. But I think that there are other things that I think that we may not be aware of, because, as I said, menopause is way more than hot flashes. It is also the long-term health implications of what's happening to menopause. And here's another thing that happens more prominently in Black women: a lot of fibroids. So you get in perimenopause and there's a lot of bleeding. And let me just say, I don't have to explain to any woman in that room what that makes you feel like when you've got every month, this is how you were depleted. You can't leave the house. That's a problem. That needs to be treated. That's another thing that people don't complain about enough. There is no reason, when I show you how much blood you're supposed to lose in the period, is 80 cc's, which is less than a half a cup. That's over your entire period, not in one change. And women are living like this. And this is where I say, when I advocate for you, and when I want you to know what you should do and what you should ask for, I think that every woman deserves the conversation about the risks and benefits of HRT. And you can do it or not do it. And if you're saying, I'm good, my bone density is great, I don't need this, happy for you. But let me tell you something that you may not have now, but may be a problem later, is that way after menopause, the issues, some women have vaginal dryness and painful sex immediately, and some will be okay. And then, 4, 5, 6 years down the road after menopause, then they'll develop these symptoms, frequent urinary tract infections. And you're not thinking about menopause now, because that was 5 years ago. You're just thinking it's part of aging, or maybe I should just get a Depends. No. Those are things that every woman can and should use vaginal estrogen. Whether you're sexually active or not, with a male partner or not, doesn't matter, because what you're doing is trying to maintain not only the integrity of your vagina and for your comfort, but also urinary tract infections, frequency, urgency, incontinence issues as you age. So everybody should have that, whether you're having all symptoms or none. But at the end of the day, I don't want anybody to think that I'm here, like hormones. They're fantastic when they work. And there are also going to be a few people that, for whatever reason, have contraindications to using hormone therapy. And we have to come up with good alternatives for those women who either choose not to or for medical reasons can't take hormone therapy.
I'm going to go back to the question I think I asked earlier. How long can you stay on HRT? Because is there a cutoff?
Forever, if you want to.
Okay.
You know what? I feel like,
happy.
we've all announced, it's like being at an AA meeting. It's like, hi, I'm Sharon. I'm 67 and I've been on hormones for 15 years. No, I have. I've been on hormones forever. And let me say this, because I think it's really another important thing to do. There are the reasons why you can't medically, but then there are the reasons why we take ourselves off the table because we think we can't. All right? Breast cancer being chief among them. You don't have breast cancer, but you're like, oh, my mother had breast cancer, my sister had breast cancer, whatever. I have 2 sisters with breast cancer. 2 completely different cancers, one premenopausal, one postmenopausal. We've done the genetic testing. We don't have that gene, but it's very prevalent. But this is the thing that I want you to understand, is that don't look at hormones as something that's going to increase your risk. Your risk is your risk, depending upon your lifestyle, whether or not you drink alcohol. And let me just say, they said women should have 1 drink a day. That's it. Less is more.
Is that champagne included in that?
Well, that we got an exception tonight. But there are lifestyle things that you can do that will minimize your risk. But whether the decision of whether you choose hormones or not, don't think that that's adding to your risk. It is not. It's your risk is your risk.
Can you share a little bit about the study that was done many years ago that freaked a lot of women out about HRT? And again, we're not pushing HRT, but in terms of getting the accurate information out, can you talk about that and why it was misleading?
The study that Robert's talking about, is the Women's Health Initiative. Okay, so this study was started over 30 years ago. They started enrolling in the study, and the central question that they were trying to answer is, does hormone therapy, estrogen and progestin, or estrogen alone, because if you don't have a uterus, you've had a hysterectomy, you don't need to take the progestin. And the central question they were trying to answer is, does hormone therapy decrease your risk of heart disease? Because heart disease is the number 1 killer of everyone in this country and even of women. So it wasn't asking about whether or not it caused breast cancer, and it wasn't asking whether or not it relieved the symptoms of menopause. We knew that. We had 50 years of using hormone therapy before this study started. So it was really a cardiovascular question that they sought to answer. Well, when they enrolled people in the study, you could be at enrollment anywhere from 50 to 79 years old. And the majority of the women were well over 60. The average age of the participants was 63 years old. They were more than 10 years beyond the time of when they had menopause. Some of them more than that, decades after. The problem, and that's the fundamental flaw with the study, is that you were not giving hormones to women that we would normally prescribe to. We would prescribe when you're menopausal and symptomatic. You're giving hormones to women many years later. And that's why they didn't see the benefit, because it doesn't take, higher level thinking to see, well, if you're going to prevent something, why don't you give it to the women before they have the heart disease? A 75-year-old already has heart disease if she's going to have it. Same thing. So that was problem number one. But even the lack of benefit wasn't the thing that got the headlines. It was that they said it doesn't help your heart and it increases your risk of breast cancer by 26%. But that was only in the women who were in the estrogen and progestin group. But let me just explain that to you. When someone says to you, something is up 50%, 26%, the next question ought to be, well, what's the actual number? And what this study showed right at that time of publication is that for women who were in the placebo group who didn't take hormones, there was an incidence of about 30 per 10,000 women per year would be diagnosed with breast cancer. In the estrogen and progestin group, 38 per 10,000 per year. So an additional 8 per 10,000, or less than 1 in 1,000 women. When you say it that way, less than 1 woman per 1,000 women over a year, I'll take that risk. Well, what about the other benefits? And it didn't weigh it against the decrease in the risk of osteoporosis. So when you said the words breast cancer to women, you can imagine, and I had practiced for 10 years before that study came out, had been prescribing to women, they were happy. And when you said breast cancer, threw them away. And there we have stood for 23 years. And that's why it's so important to get the record straight. It never said it caused breast cancer, but that was certainly the impression that they gave, not only women, but doctors as well. So that's why I said, if your doctor's practiced since, got out of residencies after 2002, they too are susceptible to that same misinformation about HRT.
Wow.
Speaking of that study also, didn't insurance carriers also get involved and decide that they didn't want to cover the insurance in a period of time? Wasn't there a sort of a discrepancy? So OBGYNs were apprehensive about prescribing and seeking sort of a...
It wasn't so much of an insurance issue. One of the other problems with that study is that, again, the population that they were studying was not representative of the typical age. Now we look at the data, and when they take out the women who were actually between 50 and 60, they found that they actually did have a decrease in heart disease, and there is no increase in the risk of breast cancer if you start. That's why we say preferably start before 60 or within 10 years because of that. Now, and I will say this is an insurance and a pharma question that you didn't ask that I will answer for you, is that study was the medication in that large study, which was like over 100,000 women across the country, all of the medication was provided by Wyeth Ayerst, who was the maker of Premarin at that time, which was the largest medication. So it was the name brand. So they had a vested interest in giving this medication because if it came out in their favor, then they're the only medication that has that indication. And here's the other little tidbit. Look, menopause trivia. Premarin comes from pregnant mare's urine. I've never been a fan of prescribing it for that reason. I'm like, well, if you can get it from a plant, why would you do that to horses? But okay, that's what they do. So pregnant mare's urine. And the other reason why I think Wyeth still had a vested interest in it is because you have to literally have a horse farm and keep those horses pregnant all the time to collect all that urine to make these medications. No one's challenging them on the patent.
Excuse me, Sharon. On behalf of the room.
My face.
Say what now? Like, we did not know. What in the...
Trying so
I
hard
was
to be
like,
straight with
I said, what? I did not know that. Did raise hands raised? Who knew that's what that stood for and that's what that was? I mean, we don't know that this drug comes from pregnant mare's urine. Oh, we gonna be on the Chat GPT with this. Go ahead. Sorry, I just had to pause you.
So, and the reason why they I think stepped up instead of some of the others is because remember, drugs will go generic. So you only got them for 7 years and now they're generic and you either got to sell a lot in the first few years. Well, the estradiol that comes from a plant source that we all take is plant-based and it was going to run out. The patent ran out on those drugs quite a while ago. Premarin, well, nobody wants to say, all right, I'm going to get my own horse farm, So they have it. They can charge whatever they want to charge for it. And that's where the insurance issue comes in. Insurance will pick and choose and say what they will pay for and what they won't. So Premarin is a name brand, so they may not pay for that. Generics are inexpensive, but there's no market incentive to do more studies on generic drugs. So the information we have is the information we have. No one's going to do a big redo of that study, but I think we have enough from that to be able to say some things because now we understand what went wrong and how people were misinformed. And it's just really getting out. We've known this. I've known this for 23 years when you read the article, but people were no better then than they are now. They just said, oh, I saw it on TV. Nobody ever read the article, but it never said that. And so you have to realize that that is what we are sort of fighting against because unfortunately in this country, the impartial people who just want to study something because it's interesting and because it might be good for you, just know that industry sponsors most of the medical research.
Janine.
I'm still
That
a
messed
little.
you up.
Just yeah. So sorry. I was really engaged.
She's even more resolute now. She's like, oh, I'm definitely not taking them up. You don't have to take that one.
I'm gonna call you on tomorrow. So I wanted to ask a couple other questions as it relates, because I do feel like one of the other things you touched on as you were talking about the benefits of HRT, just generally speaking, which also just speaks to aging generally. So in your book, you talk about Alzheimer's, you talk about heart health, you talk about kind of the benefits of exercising. And I'd love for you to just expound a little bit more about, as we look forward and think about the things we want to be preventative of, and can you talk about what some of those things are we should be doing generally, and then how HRT plays a role in that or not?
I think that there is no way we can have any discussion about anything, be it going through menopause, cancer prevention, heart disease prevention, strokes, Alzheimer's. There's nothing that doesn't start with the three basics. Get a good night's sleep, eat a healthy diet, exercise. I mean, if you only had to do three things, I'd say do those three things, and obviously don't smoke cigarettes and treat your high blood pressure and that kind of stuff. But that's like that's the holy trinity of good health and healthy aging, regardless of what you do, whether you do hormones or not, may be appropriate, may not, but whatever it is that you're going to deal with on the other side is going to always be improved by just doing those three things. So prevention is, I think I want everybody to know that that's the message. And then sometimes you've done all you can do and you are still not where you need to be, then don't be afraid or don't be sort of talked out of choosing the thing that's going to make you feel better. And here's another part that I think that women sometimes do to themselves. We've gotten so comfortable with suffering, And it just starts, it starts from the moment you get your period, and then it's PMS and it cramps and pregnancy. We just have accepted that burden that this is just something that comes along with womanhood. And I'm here to say, no, how about this? And particularly as we age, because we're going to live 30 to 40% of our lives in our post-reproductive years. And you want to be healthy and active and vital during those years. So whatever you need to do to make that happen, that's what you need to do. Thank you.
Quick question. Can you talk about progesterone when that's reduced, resilience, stress, and how progesterone affects your stress levels and ability to deal with stress?
Well, it depends. And there's a lot of conversation about progesterone as well. And I think that when I'm talking about hormone therapy for relief of menopausal symptoms, generally estrogen is the secret sauce, and you need progesterone because if you have a uterus, the reason why what we learned in those 50 years is don't give estrogen by itself because it increases your risk of getting uterine cancer. So it's like, put the progesterone or progestogen in that mix, and it protects the lining of the uterus. That's why anybody with the uterus should take estrogen, and you should also take a progestin. And they're different ones. And progesterone is, you may have seen these terms like bioidentical. All bioidentical means is that if you drew the structure on a chalkboard, it would be chemically identical to the one that your ovaries make. Bioidentical estrogen, bioidentical progesterone. There are others that are not exactly like it, but they work as well. So I think that, again, you need it if you have a uterus, but there are people that make a lot of claims about, and I think you have to be very careful when people are saying, I'm just going to give you one of these and we're going to balance your hormones and we're going to do this. And I'm like, really? What are you doing? I mean, you treat what the issue is. Progesterone really works well for some people for calming them down and helping them sleep at night, which is why I say if you're going to take your progesterone, take it at bedtime. But some women don't tolerate progesterone. Some women say it makes me feel sad or bloated or whatever. And if you don't tolerate that natural progesterone or the micronized progesterone, then we have other ones. And don't let words like synthetic get in the way of you thinking that synthetic is bad and natural is good. Well, I told you the only natural product we have on the market is Premarin. Okay?
Well, there it is.
Everything else is... everything else is synthetic. All synthetic means is that it's man-made. It doesn't exist in nature. You're not chewing a root. All your medication is synthetic. But when we're having the hormone conversation, we get into these camps. Natural, this, and a lot of this is just things to make you think it's better than the other thing. So progesterone, yes, whether it's natural or not natural. There is no natural progesterone. Whether it's the bioidentical progesterone or one of the synthetic versions that you can use if you do not tolerate the natural progesterone. But that one tends to have some calming properties, whereas the others tend not to.
Can I ask you, what about when you've been, it's been great for me, right? I'm on the combination of three. But at what point should I look at, can you hear me okay, John? Need this. At what point do you start thinking about going up in dosage on the estradiol? Or do you just keep going?
Generally the way I would prescribe is that we start medium, and it depends on how close you are to your actual menopause. Because if you are, and you don't have to wait. Here's another thing. If you're symptomatic in that perimenopausal phase and you're still getting your period, a lot of doctors will say, oh, no, I did your blood work. You're not menopausal. This isn't menopause. I'm like, didn't I just tell you I had hot flashes and night sweats? Believe what the symptoms that you're having. And remember, if you're in that age range, regardless of whether you're getting your periods or not, if you're starting to have symptoms, brain fog, vaginal dryness, any of those 34 symptoms that we associate with menopause,
Can you
It's
share
40
some of
now.
those? Can you
It's
share
40
some of
now.
those that they may not
Everything.
be?
I promise you, they're all in there. But dry skin, itchy skin, people feeling like
In the hot in here chapter
you know, yeah,
of what
they're
I can
all there.
expect. It's page
You know-
208 in heart.
They're all there. But, that's why I said you don't have to wait. And there is no requisite amount of suffering that you have to get to. It's not like you say, no, you've only suffered for 11 months. Come back at 12. When you're bothered, that's when you should seek treatment. And there are ways that we can give hormones even while women are getting their periods, one of which is called birth control pills, because their birth control pills are quite helpful because so many women have bleeding problems in the perimenopause. And I tell you, those heavy, out of control, then using hormone therapy in the lower doses that we use postmenopause is not going to control the bleeding. So sometimes, birth control pills are helpful getting through that transition. And it's still just estrogen and progesterone.
Okay.
That was. I've been taking it so long that I love taking it that I don't have a lot of questions about it, honestly, because I just think it's great. I think it's life-changing. It's made my life easier for what I do for a living in beauty and wellness. My skin is great. I have great muscle retention. I noticed when I do go off it, because I had brain surgery last year, and I didn't keep up with it for a while, and I noticed an immediate difference in my muscle mass and my skin. And I was like, okay, as soon as I can walk again, I'm going to walk to my GYN's office and get this done. So my main question was, how long could I stay on it? And also, I hear what you're saying about the pellets, because there was a point early on where I had hormonal acne. It didn't last long, and I did have some facial hair. So I probably had a little bit too much testosterone, but since it was every 3 months or every 3 or 4 months, just the next time I had it, he just lowered the levels of the testosterone. So, I go back and forth with people sometimes on social media because, some people are just like, I just want to age naturally. I'm like, or age gracefully. And I'm like, okay, but, you don't have to suffer for the sake of aging gracefully. Right. You know what I mean? That goes for HRT, that goes for Botox, that goes for a lot of things. You know what I mean? Whatever floats your boat, you should do that. So.
No.
Nope. Okay, I think we can agree that we're getting a lot of helpful information here, right? So we're going to open it up to some audience questions. If anybody has any questions. Okay. Oh, wow. Okay, there you go. All right, let's... Okay, go ahead.
Good evening. My question is for the percentage of women who cannot take HRT. What natural remedies can one take? Like, I've been taking black cohosh, and the reason why I'm not on HRT is because I had uterine cancer 11 years ago. And black cohosh seems to help, but if there's anything else that you would recommend, I would be interested in hearing.
Okay, we should talk afterwards because I will answer that specific question for you. But let me just tell you who, I hate to even say who can't, but this is the new phase of how we're going to talk to women. We're going to give you the risks. We'll give you the benefits. We'll talk about what are your treatment goals? How do you want to feel? What are you at risk for? And you are part of that conversation in terms of making the decision. Do I want to do this or not? That's how it should be, first off. But that's not how it's been done. We just go, you can't have it. You can't. I'm not going to write a prescription for you. And what are those things that are the things that we say you can't have hormones traditionally? If you personally have breast cancer actively, not I had breast cancer 20 years ago when I was 30 and now I'm 50 and I'm going through menopause, that has been sort of re-examined as part of that conversation. Because I told you, it doesn't cause breast cancer, but we have that issue. But that's a reason why. But if you're actively being treated for breast cancer, no, you should not be on hormone therapy at that time. If you have undiagnosed uterine bleeding, which can be a sign of uterine cancer, then yes, and I don't mean your regular periods, I'm saying something that's out of the ordinary or postmenopausal bleeding, then you should not take. It used to be absolutely that women who had blood clots in your leg or lungs could not take hormone therapy, because we know that estrogen slightly increases the risk of blood clotting, less so with people who use patches or the transdermal estrogen than taking oral. So there are ways to get around that even. It's not an absolute on clots. And it depends on why you had a clot. Were you in a car accident and you broke your leg and you were immobilized and you had a clot? Well, that doesn't mean that you have any genetic predisposition to blood clotting. So these are things that, like I said, that used to be absolute but are not. And the only other thing that is an absolute, that we say now is an absolute contraindication, if you personally have had a stroke or a heart attack. That's it. Notice what I didn't say. You have high blood pressure, so you have diabetes. So those are not contraindication. And trust me, they would, if they had any evidence to say that it did, they would have loved to put some more contraindications on there. There's just no evidence that says you can't have it. So I will answer your question specifically because, again, it depends on the stage of the cancer that you had, whether or not the surgery. Most people with uterine cancer, the surgery itself is curative. You go on and live the rest of your life and you don't get a recurrence of your uterine cancer because your uterus is gone. So that's the good news about that. So that's why I said, even in those circumstances, it depends on more than just the presence or absence, this kind of stage. But again, as I say blanketly, anybody can use vaginal estrogen, whether you've had breast cancer, uterine cancer, any kind of cancer, because of the fact that when you put estrogen in your vagina in the amounts that you're prescribed, it does not get absorbed systemically. So it stays where you put it. It's working on your vagina. It's working on your bladder. It is not getting into your bloodstream. So veritably no contraindications for vaginal estrogens, and then a case-by-case decision on others.
I'm on a little bit on the young side, but I'm 41 years old and I've had breast cancer twice, premenopausal. I'm currently in menopause, medically induced with Lovenox, and so I can't take the hormone replacement therapy because the whole point is to get the estrogen out of my body because I'm estrogen receptor positive. I recently, about 4 months ago, started GLP-1, which I was having hot flashes literally every 10 seconds all throughout the day and night. It was pretty unbearable. And it stopped almost overnight. So I'm curious what your, and my oncologist has told me that she really feels that, and I have top oncologist at NYU, feels that GLP-1 in terms of like breast cancer treatments and a lot of the treatments that happen to our bodies, there hasn't been a lot of, there's a lot of things that happen because of the treatments that they put us on that now they finally actually feel that we have something to do with that. So I was curious to know what your opinion was about GLP-1s and menopause in general, because that's just my specific experience, not to say that that's anything other than that.
Right.
So,
well, it's funny because when I wrote my book, I did not include GLP-1s. I mentioned them only to say I hadn't really, when this was 4 years ago when I was writing, and GLP-1s weren't in the conversation the way they are now. And I really had never prescribed them and hadn't really took care of any patients that were on GLP-1s. But, I have now, with a little bit more investigation and a little bit more looking into it, GLP-1s are great for some people because, just like I said, there's some people that come in, I know that they're eating right, they're exercising, they're doing everything that they want to do, and they just can't lose the weight. And I think, Robert, you can back me up on this. Exercise is good and good for you, and it helps you build muscle. And so secondarily, the muscle that is more metabolically active than fat will help you maintain your weight loss, but you're not going to lose weight going to the gym, not unless you eat less. And that's and for a lot of people, their eating has been so disordered over time that you're eating a little bit, but you're still not losing any weight. And for those people, GLP-1s can be helpful. They're helpful for people who, obviously, for diabetes, that's what they were originally used for. But if the hype is true, because we are in the beginning, every time I look at something, they say, oh, yes, and it does this, and it cures cancer, and it cuts down heart disease and diabetes. But let me just say this. Yes, because you're losing weight. And weight is the risk factor for all of those things. It's not the GLP-1 that's doing something magic and it's now the wonder drug. Losing weight cuts down on inflammation. It cuts down on that visceral fat that women get in menopause and perimenopause. So yes, they are helpful. And what we have, there is at least some preliminary evidence that says for women who start to put on, even when you don't gain weight, and we can all attest to this, but even when you don't gain weight, when you get to menopause, your weight redistributes. It's like, what happened here? You know, it's someplace that it never used to be. And there is some data that says for women in midlife who are going through menopause, the combination of GLP-1s and HRT together is better at maintaining the weight loss, the losing weight, than just either of them alone. So, long answer to a short question, but GLP-1s we're going to see more and more and more of them, and people are already starting microdosing and everything. But here's the thing. I did I have a podcast, by the way. It's called The Second Opinion. And what I'm trying to do is to bring in some different voices into this conversation. And I interviewed this young woman. Her name is Dr. Fatima Cody Stanford, and she's at Harvard. She's a obesity medicine specialist. And we had a very frank discussion about it. I'm like, okay, well, tell me about these GLP-1s. So I learned a lot from her. And I said, who are your patients? And she said, my typical patient is a middle-aged, menopausal white woman. She said, those are the people that are coming in, that are seeing, not necessarily because they've got major issues. It's just that people are choosing. Now, we live in a world where you can get a new butt, get some boobs, remove ribs. People do a lot of things, but what is it about that makes that okay, but making people feel like if using GLP-1s is somehow cheating? And we all know, and I'm sure Robert will tell anybody this, you can't just lose the weight. Yeah. You still have to do the work. Otherwise, you'll be skinny and weak.
Right. And GLP-1s reduce your lean muscle mass. And lean muscle mass is something that you need for health. It's something that you need for your metabolism. And so, yes, you've got to use it as part of a lifestyle.
I have a question about that. Do they reduce your lean muscle mass, or you're not working out or you're not lifting weights to put back the muscle? Is that what's happening? Are you just getting too skinny, or?
I'll let Dr. Malone answer, but from what I understand, the actual medication is linked to a reduction in lean muscle mass. Okay. And as you age, your lean muscle mass decreases. And so that is why it's essential to continue with weight training and muscle building exercises.
And your nutrition is extremely important, because now you're eating less, you're not hungry, and it really matters what you eat now. Because if you're not having, calorie dense protein, because you can only eat small amounts at a time. Mm-hmm. So otherwise you will be nutritionally developed. You will be skinny and you may not have diabetes, but you will not be well in 20 years if you keep that up. But also the interesting thing that she said to me about GLP-1s, and I asked her the question that you asked me. Well, how long can you be on them? Is it okay to be on them, lose the weight, and then come off of them and just maintain it with all the other lifestyle things? And she said, for people who are on these medications, she said, no. She said, you come off the medication, you regain the weight. She said, no matter what you've been doing, she said, it will come back. And I said, really? Like forever, ever? She said, yeah. But think of it this way. And it's just a matter of reframing the conversation. If you had high blood pressure, you wouldn't take high blood pressure. You go, oh, well, my blood pressure's good now. I think I'll stop. Right. It'll be back. Right. And I have seen it is, I mean, I do tell, this is one of the stories in my book. I have seen people that have gone through weight loss surgery, not banding. I mean, I'm talking about bypass surgery that they have done, lost 100 pounds, and I'll be darned if within 5 years, 50% of them would have regained the weight. And you're like, how is that even possible? That just tells you how potent, this drive and whatever's happening with someone's metabolism really is. And that's why we cannot look at obesity as a personal failure. It is not. It is something that's off kilter, your set point, or whatever you want to call it. But what I was going to say about the losing the muscle mass, yes, if you lose 100 pounds, you're going to lose some muscle. It's not all fat. So you're going to lose some fat and you're going to lose a lot of your muscle. And so that's why I said, if you're going to do them, just be vigilant. And the one last thing I'll say about weight, I always say that before I go on again, is this is the one thing that I want to say to women in midlife, is that there is a point at which weight is not the goal. Don't pursue weight loss because you want to weigh a certain amount on the scale, or you want to get into those jeans, or you want to do whatever. In midlife, it's okay to be a little bit over where you think you want to be. And as a matter of fact, as long as you are metabolically healthy and active and doing all these things, so what? If you're not clinically having repercussions from it and you're maintaining your blood sugar's good, your blood pressure's good, you don't have the metabolic syndrome, elevated cholesterol, all those things that put you at risk, then be okay with being a little bit bigger than you used to be. It's okay. Do it because, we as women, we're harsh. We're really harsh on ourselves about what we think we need to look like and how much we need to weigh. And see, this is the other thing about being postmenopausal. After a while, you're just like, yeah, whatever, yeah, okay. Not what I do not wear the size of jeans I wore when I was in college, nor do I aspire to.
You're also not single.
That's true.
So can I ask you a question about bone density?
Yes.
That's because like in January, I had a really bad cold. It's like when everybody had gotten sick and it lasted forever. I fractured a rib from coughing. And now in retrospect, again, now everything that goes wrong, I'm like, oh, it's menopause, because I wasn't thinking that before. Can you talk about sort of the impact of menopause on bone density, what we need to do, how often we should get tested for just to check, and what can we do to help ourselves?
All right. So the one thing that we do know is that the amount of bone density that you have has really been fixed. You have created all the bone you're ever going to create, usually when you're in your teens and 20s. So how much bone density you start with depends upon your activity level, your ethnicity, your diet, whether or not, maybe you never drank milk, all of these things that lead to healthy bone formation as a young person. When you get to menopause, you need estrogen. It is actually helping maintain your bones. So when you get to menopause, if you choose not to do hormone therapy, I always recommend that at menopause, before you make a decision, yay or nay, you should get a bone density and see where you're starting from. Because you don't know, they're comparing you to a theoretical 30-year-old from I don't know where, but it's to a standard that may have never been you. So before you get yourself hyped up, oh my God, I have osteopenia. Osteopenia is not a disease. It is just saying that you are on the low end of bone density. I may not have ever measured up to that, but why it's important to know where you are, because should you choose not to do hormone therapy, I would say follow it up in another couple of years, because you will continue to lose bone density from the moment your estrogen goes away. And it goes down and down and down. And the most rapid phase of bone loss happens in the first 5 to 6 years after menopause. That's why I said, don't wait. You will continue to lose it, but albeit at a lower rate as you age. One of the FDA indications for hormone therapy, one is for relief of hot flashes. The other is prevention of osteoporosis. That's what the FDA says you can use it for. And certainly it should be used for the genital urinary syndrome of menopause, which is a vaginal dryness. But it also should be used in women who have had early or premature menopause before age 45 or before age 40, because women who have early menopause or have chemotherapy and they're in menopause, or you've had a hysterectomy and for whatever reason your ovaries are out and you're in menopause, those are women that should take hormone therapy, because the earlier you go through menopause, the more that those changes start happening earlier for you. So you'll be 10 years ahead of where somebody else is at your age in terms of your bone loss, in terms of cardiovascular increase, Alzheimer's increase. That's the thing we hadn't talked about. But for women who have an early or premature menopause, they're at increased risk for developing Alzheimer's. So again, these are, there are a lot of things that you need to know other than just hot flashes. And for African-American women, one of the things that I was taught in medical school, and I verified this with my other colleagues, we were taught that Black women don't get osteoporosis. They're not at risk for osteoporosis. And I was like, and that was a head scratcher. I was like, really? Why? Well, that's also not true, because what they are assuming about Black women is that every Black woman is the same size. If you're big, I have big bones. I have big bones. My bone density was good at 50. It's still good now because I'm still taking my hormones. But if just because you're Black does not mean you're not at risk for osteoporosis. It depends on Black women are less likely to be out in the sun, which is a natural source of vitamin D. The darker your skin, the less you absorb vitamin D from the sun. A lot of Black women are lactose intolerant, so they have had low calcium intakes for most of their adult lives. So again, don't look at people and say, oh, you're Black, I don't have to worry about that. That is something you advocate for yourself at menopause. Doctor, can I get a bone density? And if it's good, great. Don't do another one for another 5 years. But if it's low, it needs to be monitored, and it might help you make other decisions about whether or not you choose to do hormone therapy. And, and just, that's why I said, it's just a data point for you to know, because the current recommendation for when you should get a bone density is age 65. Now, explain to me, if you're 15 years after menopause, you've already lost a considerable amount of bone, why would you check it then? Get it early, even if you have to pay for it, because they're not that expensive. And there's an extra perk, because usually when you get a bone density, they'll tell you what your body fat and muscle mass and all that stuff is on there. They can do that on the same thing.
We'll do one more question.
So I have a mic. I bought my own.
Okay. Well played. Very well played.
So I do want to say thank you. I feel like one, you answered a big question that I had. It's been really close to my heart because I recently had my annual, and I feel like I turned a really important corner. I'm in the group of folk who have very early menopause. I started peri when I was about 41. And have been fully menopausal since 46. I am 54. And I grew up in the age of that study and was told never, ever to take. So I have had nothing. But of late, I feel like my little parts are falling apart. And so I actually changed my doctor because I wanted someone who would be a little more thoughtful and not telling me or not even mentioning hormone therapy. I finally got with Dr. Peggy Roberts in Brooklyn. She's wonderful. And so I'm 2 weeks in to, I have this lovely patch right here, right now. I'm not going to show it because also this thing. And also progesterone. And I'm just wondering, thinking about the bone density, that really scared me. Yeah. So when the density test came back, it really scared me because I have such a job that I have to move. I got to go. And I've had a lot of knee pain and I'm just trying to figure out, but I feel like I turned a corner because things are now really showing up. And I'm just wondering like what to expect 2 weeks in, what to expect a month in.
Well, it's easy when you have symptoms. Because when you have symptoms, you're on the right dose when the symptoms go away. If you're 2 weeks in and you're like, well, I'm only having half as many hot flashes as I had 2 weeks before. Well, that's better, but then that's not right. So just know that certainly by 2 weeks to 4 weeks at the outside, that's usually where you're going to be. So if you're either, and particularly if you haven't had estrogen in your system for a long time, it's a good thing to start low. And then if you need to go up slowly. Don't just go full bore right off the bat.
Okay, we do have to bring this to an end. I know there are many, many questions. However, Dr. Malone is still going to be here. He's going to be signing books at the back, and so you're going to be able to answer your questions, ask your questions. But let's say thank you to our panelists and Dr. Malone. Thank you for coming. Please take you're going to get books from Dr. Malone, and please take the Brace book. It's the story of all of our clients. And there is a postcard in there that will allow you to get a complimentary Dutch test, which helps with your hormone levels if you decide to join the Brace Life family. Okay. But thank you so much. And
can I say one thing?
Sure.
I forgot one thing before I go. After we've got all this information, it's not uncommon that once you walk out of here and you go, great, I'm ready. And then you go to your doctor and you will still be faced with your doctor who doesn't know what they're doing. And that is really why I do what I do at Alloy. I am the chief medical advisor at Alloy Health. And what it is that we do menopause and perimenopausal care. We do it digitally. We keep the prices at a level that it's not exorbitant because for a lot of women, the choice is you get nothing or you can go to a doctor and spend $1,800 and get a consult with a concierge doctor. So that's the need that we're really trying to address. And I say this to say, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I advise them. I don't prescribe for them. I make sure that they stay on the straight and narrow in terms of the things that they prescribe and the things that they promise. And so that's Alloy. If you go to myalloy.com, if you cannot find a doctor, if you have a doctor, then do that. And the last but not least thing is I have a podcast. It's called The Second Opinion with Dr. Sharon. So
The Second Opinion with Dr. Sharon. Thank you so much for coming.